Ladies and gentlemen, a chilling criminal case from the state of Illinois. To profit from a $400,000 insurance payout, a mother-in-law allegedly intoxicated her daughter-in-law, processed her body into pickled pork rolls, and invited the whole neighborhood to eat. At reunion feasts, amid the crisp laughter of New Year's gatherings, there is a taste that always seems harmless. The light sourness, the fiery heat of garlic and chili, the crispy chew of shredded pork skin, and the distinctive aroma of aromatic leaves rolled inside a layer of fresh green banana leaves. Pickled pork rolls, a rustic gift from a small American town, a familiar dish that has entered the memories of many generations. But what would happen if that delicious taste no longer belonged to joy, but became something that made you swallow an untold horror? In a Midwestern state, in a place hailed as the cradle of the famous pickled pork roll, there was a long-established production facility, revered by both locals and merchants as a sacred site. Here, pork rolls were not only food but a heritage, a pride passed from generation to generation. The owner was a woman in her early 60s, with hands praised as golden for shaping pork rolls. Under her was her son, the future heir, along with the quiet support of his young, beautiful daughter-in-law, always mentioned with admiration. It seemed the story would remain as peaceful as the perfectly fermented batches of pork rolls. Until, during a major holiday, a new batch was shipped, and just a few days later, the entire area seemed to catch fever. Distributors, eateries, and restaurants from nearby states all called, their voices full of surprise and praise. Never before had the pork rolls been this good. The flavor wasn't just rich, it had something alluring, pulling in the senses, awakening even those who thought they were too familiar with the dish. People could not stop eating, could not stop asking, could not stop ordering more, while the owner still kept a calm face, only smiling lightly when asked about the secret. There was one person who did not feel at ease. Not a customer, nor a family member, but the delivery driver. He was the one who had witnessed every batch leaving the shop, every shipment going across the states. And this time, he noticed something different. Not only different in taste, but in the atmosphere of the workshop, in the silent gaze of the sun, in the faint sound of wind through the tightly locked door of the main processing room that once welcomed him like family. A change, an unusual flavor, a silent disappearance. No one knew that the pork rolls causing a storm in the market were the start of a horrifying chain of events that would shake this peaceful land. Because sometimes, evil does not come from the shadows, it is carefully seasoned, wrapped in fresh green banana leaves, and placed on the table of an entire community with the smile of an old woman who seems harmless. And then, each roll unwrapped would no longer be just food, but a slice of tragedy, of blood and flesh, of plots and monstrous crimes under the name of family tradition. In the heart of this region, where the pickled pork roll was worshipped like a cultural icon, there was a family respected as the standard of success and kindness. The owner, Mrs. Eleanor, a woman with silver-threaded hair, a weathered face but eyes as sharp as a blade, was the image of a traditional woman, dedicated, strict, and private. Under her hands, each batch of pork rolls was checked meticulously down to each strand of pork skin, each drop of fish sauce, each pinch of minced garlic. Standing beside her was her only son, Robert, considered the golden child of the town. He had a scholarly frame, kind eyes, always polite to the workers, respectful to customers, and especially devoted to his wife. That wife, Emily, was a young, modern woman with a lovely face and a refined sense of style. She did not directly take part in production, but was often spoken of as the one bringing fresh energy to the family. She sold goods online, kept up with trends, and sometimes visited the workshop, her clear laughter winning everyone's affection. In the eyes of others, their home was a little dream in real life, a warm, three-generation family bound by morals and love. But like a sudden summer storm, that peace was shattered. Emily suddenly disappeared from the familiar rhythm of the workshop. No farewell, no signs of conflict, no sounds of argument or fight. Mrs. Eleanor, with her usual composure, simply said that her daughter-in-law had flown urgently to Denver to take care of her gravely ill mother. The reason sounded reasonable at such a sensitive time. Who would suspect anything? Neighbors sent their wishes for health and recovery. Everyone thought Emily would return in a few days, but a few days stretched into a week. No calls, no messages, no sign of contact. Her absence began to feel strange. Robert, once the model of a devoted husband, seemed to transform into another person. His eyes sank deep, his face grew gaunt, and he was sometimes seen standing still in the backyard, staring at the locked meat processing room, quickly turning away when someone approached. He did not mention his wife, did not answer messages from her friends, and stopped posting on social media. Stranger still, Mrs. Eleanor showed no concern. On the contrary, she became more active than ever, taking over all shop operations, controlling orders with unusual firmness. When asked about Emily, she would simply smile and say, "She's still in Denver taking care of her mom." But behind that smile was a cold, sharp look, nothing like that of a worried mother-in-law. Rumors began to spread. Some claimed to have seen Mrs. Eleanor enter the processing room in the middle of the night. Others heard machinery running during off hours. Some wondered why the main production area was suddenly off limits, but no one dared to ask. To them, this family was still the symbol of trust and tradition, until something far more terrifying than gossip appeared, and it didn't come from people's mouths, but from the pork rolls themselves. The strange, irresistible flavor had begun exactly when Emily disappeared and the processing room was locked. At first, it was just polite thank you notes from familiar distributors, but then calls began pouring in. One big city restaurant owner called late at night, voice full of excitement. "Eleanor, did you add some new secret? My customers are fighting over it, they say. Eating this pork roll feels addictive." Another client messaged urgently. "I sold out in 2 days. Customers are doubling their orders. This batch has something strange but incredibly captivating." Though the owner modestly claimed it was just an especially good cut of pork or a slight change in the ratio of garlic to pork skin, no one truly believed that was the only reason. Praise kept coming, orders skyrocketed, and stock sold out in as little as 4 to 8 hours, something unprecedented in more than 30 years of the family's business. This batch had a sweetness unusually deep, not from sugar or regular pork, but a haunting aftertaste that lingered, as if awakening every nerve of the palate. Distributors scrambled to pre-order. Some food enthusiasts drove hours to the workshop just to buy directly and taste that special flavor again. On social media, images of banana leaf-wrapped pork rolls began appearing frequently, with captions like "the best I've ever eaten" and "one bite and you'll never forget it." The workshop's name became a hot topic. People spoke of it as though it were a culinary phenomenon, a hidden national treasure that had suddenly shone bright in a fiercely competitive age. But while everyone else admired it, only one man felt uneasy: Tom, the delivery driver. He had been delivering these products for years and could detect even the smallest change. This time, the difference was too great. It wasn't just delicious, it was unsettling. It left a feeling as though he was swallowing something that didn't belong in food, something primal, triggering a survival instinct. That gnawing suspicion grew stronger when he realized the perfect batch's timing matched exactly with Emily's disappearance and the sudden locking of the main production room. Each shipment leaving the workshop carried not only rich flavor, but perhaps a growing secret, silent, smooth, without a trace. And that secret might be hidden within each roll being praised across the country. The praise rang like victory bells to some, but to others it was a death knell for a truth too horrifying to face, one that was starting to reveal itself under the fragrant banana leaves. The most striking change at the workshop wasn't in the price list or the surge of orders, it was the heavy gray steel door of the main processing room. Inside was the industrial meat grinder that had served the family for decades. Before, the door was always open. Workers came and went freely. Even acquaintances visiting were sometimes invited in to watch the family recipe in action, pride evident in the owner's eyes. But now, that place had become a restricted zone, locked day and night with a brand new, high-security padlock, the kind used for safes. Mrs. Eleanor said it was to protect the secret recipe from prying eyes. The explanation sounded plausible, but not enough to shake the creeping chill felt by those who remembered the openness of the past. Long-time workers began whispering to each other. Since the day the daughter-in-law vanished, no one had been allowed inside. No one, except Eleanor and Robert. One late afternoon, Tom arrived to pick up a rush order for a high-end restaurant in Chicago. While waiting for the boxes to be packed, he caught a sharp, stinging smell, cutting through the usual scent of rice powder, garlic, and fresh pork skin. It wasn't vinegar. It wasn't meat. It was the acrid stench of bleach, strong enough for industrial cleaning, the kind you'd expect in a hospital or a morgue. Passing by the back hallway, his eyes instinctively drifted to the small ventilation gap above the steel door. The main lights inside were off, but a pale yellow bulb in the corner cast jagged shadows. And he saw her, Eleanor, small-framed, silver hair tucked under a plastic apron, black rubber gloves on her hands, leaning over the meat grinder. She gripped a high-pressure hose, blasting every crevice of the machine again and again, at least 10 times. Then she scrubbed the blades with a wire brush, bent down to wipe the concrete floor beneath, where dark reddish-gray streaks had seeped into the pores. It wasn't cleaning, it was a ritual. She moved with obsessive precision, as though trying to erase something that could never truly be erased. Tom froze. His heart pounded not from fear, but from an instinct whispering that the locked door was not guarding a recipe. It was guarding a crime, maybe a memory, maybe a body. The next morning, another batch of the legendary rolls left the workshop, greeted with the cheerful voices of customers. But inside Tom, the unease grew heavier. It came to a breaking point when, during a routine pickup, a worker dropped one of the boxes. The banana leaves burst open, dozens of pork rolls scattering across the concrete floor. Some split open, revealing the pink meat inside, mixed with rice powder and red chili flakes. Eleanor rushed out, her voice sharp. "God, do you know where that order's going?" Workers scrambled to collect the rolls. Tom bent down to help, and that's when he saw it. One split roll had something inside. Not peppercorn, not pork cartilage. A small, off-white fragment wedged between the shredded pork skin. It had grooves, an irregular shape. It was bone, but not from a pig. Without hesitation, Tom pinched it between his thumb and forefinger, hiding it in his palm, as if it were nothing. He mumbled an apology, finished loading the truck, and drove away. Only when he reached a deserted stretch of road did he stop, roll down the window, and open his hand. The fading sunlight hit at a small piece of human finger bone, the curve unmistakable. And then, like lightning, memory struck. The last time he saw Emily, she had been smiling, scrolling her phone, her hands adorned with neatly trimmed milky white nails. The bone in his palm was missing its nail. His throat tightened, his stomach knotted, nausea rose like a tide. A cold wave climbed his spine as every detail connected the locked room. The bleach, Robert's hollow eyes, the strange taste everyone adored. That night, Tom couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He didn't dare call anyone, didn't dare go to the shop. Instead, he went to an old internet cafe across town and typed not a text, not a casual message, but a letter. No greeting, no name, just the truth, raw, detailed, suffocating. He described Emily's disappearance, Robert's strange behavior, the locked door, the overpowering bleach smell, Eleanor's obsessive cleaning of the grinder, and the bone fragment found in the roll. At the end, one single line: "I am the one who knows the truth." He printed it, sealed it in an envelope with the bone wrapped in plastic, and sent it not to local police, not to the press, but to the office of a state homicide commander known for integrity. Days later, on the top floor of the State Criminal Investigation Bureau, the commander opened the envelope. The seasoned man had seen thousands of case files, but as he read the trembling words and saw the bone, his hand tightened. The last sentence burned in his mind. If I'm right, the missing woman has become part of the rolls being sold nationwide. A special task force was formed immediately, quietly. The mission, not just to solve the case fast, but to solve it completely. Every passing minute could mean hundreds more rolls leaving the shop, each possibly containing human remains. When the anonymous letter and the sample, suspected to be human bone, were placed on the meeting table of the special task force, no one in the room could remain indifferent. These were people who had faced hundreds of cold-blooded cases, yet they still felt a chill down their spines. The crime described was too brutal, the story too unbelievable, but the bone fragment inside the finished pork roll was undeniable. An order was given that very night, confirmed the identity of the suspected missing victim, Emily. A special operations team was dispatched to her hometown in Denver, where, according to Eleanor, Emily had flown to care for her gravely ill mother. The investigation began with what seemed like a simple phone call, but that single call tore the first hole in Eleanor's carefully crafted mask. On the other end of the line was Emily's father. When asked about his wife's health, he was stunned. "She's perfectly healthy. Why are you asking?" His answer made the entire investigative team stop breathing. When they asked if Emily was currently in Denver, the man hesitated. We thought she was still out there with her husband. She hasn't called us for almost 2 weeks. Her phone is off, but we figured she was just busy." Within hours, the team was at Emily's parents' house. Her mother opened the door, healthy, alert, carrying a tray of vegetables she'd just chopped. Emily's phone and social media accounts had been completely silent for over 10 days. No returned messages, no calls, no sign of contact. On an old wooden table in the house still sat the wedding photo of Emily and Robert. Her radiant smile in that picture seemed to stare right into the eyes of the investigators. Emily had not returned home. Her mother was not sick. No one in the family knew where she was. Eleanor's statements to neighbors and workers had been lies, and this was no longer a matter of suspicion. It was now a confirmed criminal disappearance. The task force leader marked one key note in red: completely missing for 14 days. In his experience, after such a length of time, the probability that the victim was still alive was near zero. The first layer of Eleanor's disguise had been torn, and behind it was the cold stench of deceit. The team withdrew quietly, careful not to alert the suspects. One mistake, and the killers could destroy any remaining evidence or kill again to cover their tracks. There was only one way forward: act fast, tighten the net, and strike without warning. The next morning, when the workshop had just opened and workers were preparing ingredients, a group of unfamiliar visitors appeared at the gate. They weren't in police uniforms and carried no badges, just neat shirts with nameplates from the State Department of Consumer Protection and an official letter for an unscheduled health and safety inspection. Eleanor received them calmly, without the slightest tremor. She invited them in, smiling with the practiced poise of a business owner long accustomed to inspections. "Please, make yourselves at home. I'm always ready to cooperate," she said as she poured tea, her hands steady. Robert was also present, walking silently behind her, nodding in greeting, his eyes clouded with a dim, unreadable emotion. The inspectors toured the facility: the kitchen, cold storage, fermentation area, and packaging room. Everything was spotless, organized, and up to code. Workers wore gloves, hats, and masks. It looked like a textbook model of hygiene and professionalism. Then they approached the main processing area, the one behind the locked steel door. One inspector tapped the padlock lightly. "What's this section for?" he asked. Eleanor didn't hesitate. "This is where we handle raw meat. I keep it locked to prevent contamination. Normally only my son and I enter. The recipe here is very special. I hope you understand." Her voice was gentle, unshaken. Another inspector casually asked about her daughter-in-law, recalling seeing a young woman working here before. Eleanor smiled. "She went back to Denver to care for her sick mother, but she'll be back soon. She's got such skill with wrapping rolls, flawless work." The statement flowed smoothly, without the slightest hitch. But the special task force, listening to the recorded conversation later, would mark this as confirmation. The suspect was aware she was being watched, yet continued to act out her role perfectly. Robert stood nearby, his shoulders trembling slightly when Emily's name was mentioned, but he stayed silent. His face was stiff, expressionless, as though every blood vessel inside him was screaming. The inspection ended without confiscating anything, without any obvious disruption, but every word, every movement, every expression had been noted and logged. The smiles would not last long under the glare of the truth. The very next dawn, unmarked police vehicles surrounded the workshop from multiple directions. Tactical teams in bulletproof vests and sidearms moved in simultaneously, sealing the property off completely. Eleanor stepped outside, still buttoning her jacket, and froze at the sight before her. Robert emerged moments later, unshaven, his face pale. The calm they had clung to for so long was starting to crack. An officer read out the warrant: emergency search of the facility and their personal residences under criminal investigation. Workers were ordered to stop immediately. Phones were confiscated to prevent outside contact. The forensic team headed straight to the main processing room. The heavy padlock was cut in under 10 seconds. The door swung open, and the smell hit them damp, metallic, and overlaid with the sharp sting of industrial cleaning agents. The room gleamed unnaturally, every surface scrubbed, but luminol spray under ultraviolet light revealed what the naked eye could not hide: blood, splattered across the walls, floor, even the ceiling. Beneath the grinder, dark clotted residue remained. When the machine's blades were disassembled, they found tiny bone fragments, some no bigger than a grain of rice, and strands of long, curled hair matching the description given by Emily's family. Inside a meat chute, they discovered a shattered synthetic gemstone bracelet identical to the one Emily had been known to wear. Blood, hair, bone, and a personal belonging, 4 forensic markers in one sealed room. It was no longer just suspicion, this was a slaughter site. Simultaneously, the second search team swept through the living quarters. Robert and Emily's bedroom was opened, no signs of struggle or disorder, but every single one of Emily's personal belongings was gone. Her phone, laptop, bank cards, even her identification documents, all missing. No one leaves for a trip and abandons every trace of their daily life like that. The room felt wiped clean, with only a neatly made bed and an empty wardrobe remaining. No body was found, but all the evidence converged toward one conclusion: Emily had been murdered and her body disposed of in the most ruthless way possible. The bloodstains, the bone fragments, the personal items, and the overpowering smell of bleach all painted the same grotesque picture. Her remains had been mixed with pork, garlic, and chili, wrapped in banana leaves, fermented, shipped, and eaten by thousands. The task force leader, standing in the workshop courtyard, gripped the preliminary report tightly, his eyes locked on the open steel door of the death room. The wind lifted dried banana leaves stacked nearby, but nothing could cover the truth now. In the interrogation room, harsh white light shone on Eleanor's face. The woman once celebrated as the golden hands of traditional pickled pork rolls now looked hollow. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed red, yet her expression was strangely calm. In front of her were photos of the luminol-lit blood splatter, the broken hair-filled grinder blades, the bone fragments, and the shattered gemstone bracelet. "How do you explain these?" the commander asked, his voice low but heavy. Eleanor stared at the photo for several seconds before closing her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse, trembling but deliberate. "I killed her, but I didn't mean to." The room went silent, as if the oxygen had been sucked out. Investigators leaned forward. She began her confession slowly, bitterly, with tears in her eyes. "That night," she said, "Emily came home after a live stream sales session. An argument began over money, Emily wanting to sell part of the workshop for her own business venture. The words turned sharper, Emily insulting the workshop, calling it worthless, calling Eleanor outdated, and ruining her son's future. In anger, Eleanor shoved her. Just once, but Emily slipped, falling backward. Her head struck the stainless steel meat grinder with a sound that Eleanor said she could never forget. Emily lay still, lifeless. "I only thought of Robert," Eleanor sobbed. "I didn't want him to lose his wife or go to prison. I did everything to protect him." She claimed she dragged the body to the processing room, locked the door, and spent the entire night dismembering and grinding Emily's remains, mixing them with pork. She described trembling the whole time, each lift of a body part feeling like her own death. But seasoned investigators were skeptical. No 60-year-old woman could, alone, carry a full-grown body, butcher it, grind it, clean the entire crime scene to surgical precision, and still act in panic. They suspected the confession was a performance, meant to shield someone else, someone who stood to gain the most. Financial forensics soon revealed the missing puzzle piece. Robert had taken out a $4 million life insurance policy on Emily less than a year earlier, just as he was sinking in debt. The timeline was damning. Months later, Emily vanished. Days later, sales exploded, and the policy had just matured to full payout eligibility. Robert was no grieving widower, he was the prime beneficiary. When confronted, his calm mask cracked. He initially claimed the policy was just to plan for her future, but under relentless questioning, he broke down. "I didn't mean to kill her. At first it was just to scare her, to get her to sign some papers, but it got out of control." He admitted to hitting Emily in the head with a metal pipe during a staged argument. After Eleanor egged the fight on, Emily fell, still breathing, until the second blow. From there, Eleanor took over, ordering Robert to lock the door, fetch gloves, and start cleaning. She was the one who suggested using the grinder, turning the body into the best batch ever. Robert gave a bitter laugh through tears, and it was the best and the worst. And the insurance scam, the dismemberment, the lies, it was all mapped out in a handwritten letter found hidden under Eleanor's bed, addressed to Robert. "If you're reading this, I've taken all the blame. You must act like you were under my control. Cry, stumble in your words, but never too perfectly. Live, protect this business. Withdraw the $4 million no matter what, it's yours. The dead snake's body will only feed the roots of our family tree. No mention of love, no regret, only money, reputation, and the workshop's survival." The trial. The courthouse overflowed on the first day. Eleanor appeared frail but unflinching. Robert shrank into himself, hollow-eyed. The prosecutor read a 30-page indictment: first-degree murder, conspiracy, destruction of evidence, insurance fraud, and falsifying documents. Evidence included surveillance footage of two figures hauling a heavy object into the processing room, the insurance contract, forensic confirmation of human remains in the grinder, and Eleanor's chilling letter. The defense tried to paint Robert as a victim of lifelong psychological control. The prosecution cut them down. A controlled man doesn't take out a $4 million policy, hide a body, destroy evidence, and keep selling product made from human remains. A surprise witness, a former employee, testified he'd once heard Eleanor tell Emily, "If you don't keep your mouth shut, I'll make you disappear like you never existed." Verdict: Eleanor, life without parole. Robert, 20 years, plus restitution of the $4 million and funeral costs. The workshop was shut down, its sign torn down overnight. People returned, or burned, any remaining rolls. The name once celebrated as a local treasure was now cursed. The blood-stained pork roll case had ended, but its stench lingered along with the grim lesson. Greed can season even the darkest crimes. The courthouse doors closed, but the shockwaves did not end. The once iconic pickled pork roll business, famous for decades, featured in travel guides and national food fairs, was shut down permanently. Locals returned any remaining packages, some even burned them out of disgust. The business license was revoked, the shop's website deleted, and the proud sign bearing Eleanor's name was torn down overnight. Public outrage was fierce. The media dubbed it the blood-stained pork roll case. In schools, children whispered rumors about having unknowingly eaten human pork rolls. Whether true or not, it was enough to curse the family name forever. A brand that once dominated its craft had now become a symbol of horror. What began with a strange new flavor ended as the most shocking criminal case in the state's history. A total collapse of a family, a business, and a tradition now stained with blood. All that remains is a haunting memory and a bitter lesson about ambition, greed, and the true cost of desire. If this truth makes your skin crawl, imagine how many secrets still lie buried, never to be uncovered.